If it's still a thing, vote for us for Podcast of the Month at podcastland.com. I haven't checked that website in a long time, so I don't know if that is still around, but we're just going to keep saying it over and over again. Welcome, nerds, to another episode of the Nerd You're Looking For podcast, a weekly nerd culture podcast that discusses the culture through various segments. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Twitter and Instagram are both at the Nerds Podcast. I briefly forgot the whole spiel. You can also email us at thenerdsyou'relooking4@gmail.com. Check out our website, thenerdspodcast.com. I am Patrick Kuhn, of course, and I'm with my co-host, as always, that Tyler Hunt. How's it going, man?
It's going well, man. How are you?
I'm good. So I was kind of saving this. Of course, we always talk about every episode like, oh, we chit-chatted before we started recording. And of course, we did that this particular episode too. But I wanted to see if you think this is crazy. So I recently got an idea for the YouTube channel and also the Twitch channel. I'm super, super excited about it. And I want your opinion if I'm a crazy person or not. So I'm really excited for the new Spider-Man game. I think we've discussed it a couple of times. It's something that I'm really looking forward to. I had bought myself a birthday present a couple of years ago. I bought myself a gold PS4. I hate that it's gold, but it was a whole terabyte of memory hard drive, and it was the same price as I think it was like the Nathan Drake 500 gigabyte PlayStation 4. So I went with the terabyte, even though I look like a D-bag that has a gold PlayStation 4. Kind of in anticipation for this game. And I pre-ordered the collector's edition. Like, I'm all in on this game. And I thought that it would be kind of cool, because I do see streamers do this from time to time, where they'll do like 24-hour streams. And I think I might do that for this game when it comes out. The day it comes out, I might just play it for 24 hours straight on the stream. And I think it's a fun idea, but I kind of want somebody to talk me out of it, because I feel like I would just like go insane.
Typically, when you're pretty excited about something, I would love to be the one to burst your bubble. But with this, I think you should absolutely do it.
Yeah, I'm probably going to do it. Like, I've already asked off for work. I just thought that maybe you could kind of talk some sense into me, because I talked to my wife about it, because I was like, hey, this is probably going to happen, because usually when I get something stuck in my head, it's kind of hard to get me out of it. So I was like, hey, this is probably going to happen. And since you live in the same house as me, this is probably going to affect your life as well, because I generally get pretty excited, obviously, when it comes to video games. So you at some point will have to go to sleep that day, and I will be playing video games. So enjoy trying to sleep while I'm screaming at the screen, probably even more, a tad bit more than usual, because I will be going on like 18 hours with no sleep and playing a video game straight. So it'll probably be very insane, just like ramblings. Like, I'm sure she'll come into my office at some point after it's done, and I'll just have like words scribbled on the wall, and she'll have to try to decipher everything. So, yeah, I feel like I'm going to go insane, but it'll be fun. I'm really excited for this game. It looks awesome.
Are you convinced that there's 24 hours of gameplay?
I think that I'm probably going to qualify it and say, hey, it's going to be 24 hours, or if I beat this game, whatever comes first. I honestly, from what I understand, it's a pretty open world game. And usually, like on my walkthroughs, Far Cry 5 aside, like typically when I do walkthroughs, it's usually like, especially with an open world game like this, I will kind of go off the beaten path every once in a while, but I kind of stay pretty straight. Like, okay, we're going to just do the story. But with the stream, I just kind of do whatever the fuck I want. So it'll probably be a lot of just kind of, oh, this looks cool. Let me go explore this thing. And so if I don't quite fill up the 24 hours, then that's fine. I will go back on Saturday or whatever the next day and stream and finish it up. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I don't have a PlayStation 4, and I'm considering getting a PlayStation 4 pretty much just for this game. So, I mean, that's kind of where my head's at with it, too. I used to love those open world Spider-Man games. Spider-Man 2 comes to mind as like one of the best versions of that. And typically games based on movies are awful, but those games were just so much fun. So having a game like that come out is pretty fucking exciting, man. So I'm, obviously to buy a $300 or $400, whatever it is, PlayStation 4 just to play it, it's pretty crazy. So that being said, I would absolutely pop in and out of your 24-hour live stream to see how insane you're going. So,
yeah, it's not like I'm a kid anymore. Like if I did this like 5-6 years ago, that's nothing. Like I used to stay up that late all the time, but now I'm 31 years old. It's a little insane to be doing that kind of shit. But I'm really excited. It's not like I'm gonna do it for every game that comes out or anything like that. It's just like this is one of, if not my favorite character of all time. And it seems like a really cool game. And I, like you, really love that Spider-Man 2 game. So we've talked about it before on the podcast. So yeah, I'm super excited for it. I don't foresee a situation where I might be disappointed that I stayed up for 24 hours straight, but I really doubt that there's going to be a situation where I'm going to dislike this game. Like maybe I don't love it as much as I want to love it, but I don't think, just from judging from what I've heard about the game and what I've seen, like some of the gameplay, especially E3, they showed an extended look at some of the gameplay and basically they gave you the first like little bit of the game, and it looks amazing. It just looks so cool.
Yeah, man. When does that come out?
September 7th.
Okay. Gotcha.
Are you still considering getting the plan? Are you doing the math in your head? Like,
well, so I didn't know when it came out. For some reason, I thought it was August. So September is going to be kind of a crazy month. So I don't know that I'll be able to play it right away. But yeah, I mean, I probably will get a PlayStation 4 and just use this game as an excuse to do so, and then go back and play some other games that I missed, like Uncharted and The Last of Us and some other things that I had always piqued my interest, but I wasn't able to play.
Yeah, I would definitely suggest The Last of Us, not to pimp the stream any more than I already have, but yeah, I'm currently doing a walkthrough of The Last of Us Remastered, and it's fucking amazing. Like, I haven't had a PlayStation since PlayStation 1 until, like I said, a couple of years ago, and The Last of Us was one of the first games that I bought when I got my PlayStation, and it kind of just sat on my shelf for a while, because we've talked about this before, but as much as I do for the stream and the YouTube channel and stuff, there's not as much time to play stuff on my own. And so it kind of just sat on my shelf because I didn't really have I guess I'm not necessarily a reason. I don't really need a reason to play a game, but I just kind of felt like if I was going to play this, if I was going to fit it in, I needed to do something with it. And after E3, I was just like, fuck it. It's a fucking old game, but I just want to play it. So I started playing it on the stream, and actually I've been getting pretty good reaction from it, and I'm digging the game quite a lot. So I would definitely suggest that.
Yeah, man, it's probably second on the list after Spider-Man. So
yeah, for sure. It's definitely worth it. All right. So our first segment, we just kind of like to check in with each other. We call it What We're Into. So what are you into this week?
So the other night, my wife and I went to see Hotel Artemis. So, for those unaware, this movie is set in a near future Los Angeles that's being torn apart by riots and criminals. And then Hotel Artemis is like a members only emergency room or hospital, I guess, for criminals that is ran by a character called the Nurse, who is played by Jodie Foster. This movie also stars, Charlie Day, Sterling Brown, Jenny Slate, Jeff Goldblum, and then I'm going to fuck up her name, but she's been in a lot of stuff over the last few years. Sofia Boutella, I'm guessing is how you pronounce it. And Dave Bautista as well. But back to Sofia Boutella, it's the girl that was the assassin in the first Kingsman movie with the knife legs, and she was also in Atomic Blonde. And I think she's been in a couple other things since too. But yeah, so all of them are patients in the hospital except for Dave Bautista. He's the nurse's assistant, and he goes by the name Everest. So he's in there as well. So as LA is being torn apart in this movie, there's the risk of patients dying. But seeing as they're all criminals, there's also terrible things going on within the hospital that risks everyone's safety as well. Going into the movie, I had relatively high hopes. I thought that the trailer looked really cool and it definitely looked original. I didn't know much about it, but I was definitely intrigued. It definitely looked like a movie that could end up having like a cult classic feel to it. But unfortunately, this movie is mediocre at best. And I can't say that I'm going to sit here and recommend it necessarily. For the story, there are some cool elements here and there, but it never really gets going for me. And the final act is super anticlimactic. I really appreciate the originality that goes into the story that they're trying to tell here, but you can tell there wasn't much of a budget because, again, things never really pay off the way you want. And the set pieces feel really small in a story that's set in about an entire city falling apart. I think that the filmmakers did a really good job of creating this world and giving it this dark noir feeling, but I don't think that it's ever really put to use or reaches its full potential as you progress through the movie. It's definitely not bad storytelling, but it's not something that I would recommend you go spend time on in theaters. It's definitely more of a Netflix movie that you have on in the background as you're doing something else. However, like all of that being said, despite how disappointed I was with the story, the performances are where I was the most bummed because I think that they actually got a pretty decent cast together here. But I can honestly say that not a single one of them gives a great performance except for the barely used Jeff Goldblum, because I mean, he's always amazing. And then I think Sofia Boutella was pretty good as well. I think she gets better each time she's in a movie. That being said, this is Jodie Foster. I didn't realize this. This is Jodie Foster's first movie in 5 years. And I have no idea why this is the part that she chose to kind of reemerge with. And then as much as I love people like Charlie Day, he's awful in this movie. Just awful. And Jenny Slate, I don't know, she was laughable. I'm not as familiar with her work because she just does things sporadically. And obviously I know her from Parks and Rec, and I know she's done some other things, but she tries to give a serious performance here, and it's really, really bad. I mean, I imagine you could get more out of a cast like this, so it was just really surprising to me that they all delivered pretty poor performances. So I think that this review kind of speaks for itself. If you need a star rating, I'd lean towards a 2, but I'm going to give it a 2.5 for originality. It's definitely not the worst movie I've seen this year, but it was definitely a disappointment, which was a bummer.
Yeah, you had told me that before we started recording that you were going to talk about this, and I was like, oh, cool. Like, this looked really cool, and unfortunately, I live in Evansville, like we talked about, and a lot of these, like, indie weird movies don't come to Evansville. I was actually really surprised that a movie like Upgrade came to Evansville, because I kind of feel like these are the similar types of movies. They're just like these weird sci-fi action movies that, like you said, should have like a cult following or something like that. And I was really intrigued by this because it kind of felt like, and I'm not the only one that has made this comparison, but it kind of felt like John Wick and the Continental, like that kind of feel to it. And it also has like that Marvel, the nurse kind of feel to it too. Because if you're familiar with the comic books, there is a hospital for villains in the Marvel or comic universe. And so it kind of felt like that as well, almost like John Wick meets that. And I was definitely interested in that, but yeah, it sounds like something I'll just wait until it gets on Netflix.
Yeah, it's funny because they never showed Upgrade at my local theater, but they showed this. And then in Evansville, they showed Upgrade, but they never showed this. So it's kind of like we got a reversal here. And judging by what you had to say about Upgrade, I would have much rather had seen that movie. It sounds awesome. So
yeah, I definitely got the better end of that deal.
For sure, man. So what are you into this week?
Well, some of our listeners will roll their eyes when I say this. I know Tyler kind of did when I told him this is what I was going to be talking about, but I am going to be talking about another true crime docu-series. This one is called The Staircase. My wife and I binged this over last week, And I've talked a lot about this type of series, and I'm definitely a fan of docu-series and especially true crime docu-series. And I've talked about, well, I mean, we did our full review of Making a Murderer when that came out. And then I talked about The Keepers. I talked about Evil Genius recently. There was also another, I mean, it wasn't a docu-series, but I don't think I talked about Gringo, which is a John McAfee story. But we watched it, and that's just a documentary, like a movie. But that was interesting as well. But I think that out of all the docuseries that I've talked about on the podcast, this is the one that I like the least. So if you're not familiar with The Staircase, it is about the trial of a famed author named Michael Peterson, which I'd never even heard of him before. I guess he wrote some war fiction books. I don't know. I looked it up, but it was nothing that I'd ever heard of. But that's not surprising, because if it doesn't have pictures, I'm probably not reading it anyways. But he essentially, well, of course, what the DA thinks happens is he beat his wife to death. But what he claims happens is she accidentally fell down the stairs and bled out, but he was the only one in the house. And obviously when the cops investigated it, they deemed that there was foul play. And since he was the only one in the house, they obviously arrested him for it. And it's a trial that spanned over 15. Well, no, I don't think it was over 15 years. I think it was almost exactly 15 years before it was resolved. And so it's definitely a crazy case. We talked about this when we talked about Making a Murderer. Like, you should distrust the justice system after you watch that, at least a little bit. Like, maybe he did the second murder. Like, maybe that legitimately is what happened. And I'm still not convinced that it is. I know that there's several things that have come out since then that weren't talked about in the documentary Making a Murderer. So it makes me question, maybe he did do it a little bit more, but you should definitely distrust the justice system after watching that documentary. I think the directors and the filmmakers in this show felt like you should have had the same reaction, and I just didn't, because I'm not entirely sure he didn't do it. Like, I'm pretty sure Stephen Avery didn't do it, but I'm not convinced that Michael Peterson didn't do this. And yeah, there was some shady shit that happens for sure. There was this one guy who was a blood spatter guy for the DA, and his experiments, and I say that in quotes, are really shitty. And he's literally, he later on gets fired from his job, rightfully so. And people actually went free because of some of the testimony that he did. Like, there was a point in one of the episodes where they talk about this other guy, and it was kind of a break in the Michael Peterson case, because they finally figured out, like, this guy is pretty shady and maybe we can get a retrial or at least get it dismissed or something like that. And they were kind of discussing this other guy's case, who it was clear didn't do anything. He was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. And this guy, this blood spatter guy, just completely fucked him over, and he ended up spending 17 years in prison because of it. And they were kind of like giving a brief description of his case. And I looked at my wife, I was like, man, I kind of just want to find out about this guy. Like, I don't care about the Michael Peterson stuff anymore. Like, I'm over it at this point. I kind of want to just see a docuseries about this guy, and maybe we will eventually. But yeah, I'm definitely interested in that. I just felt like, so Evil Genius, I think, was like 5 or 6 episodes, maybe not even that many. And that case is very, very interesting to me. Mostly, well, I mean, it's a very interesting case, but also because it happens in Erie, and I'm familiar with that city. So that was definitely a little bit more intriguing just because of that. But that story is super, super interesting, and there's a lot of twists and turns, and there was only a few episodes of that show. This docuseries had 13 episodes, and they were all about an hour long. So it's going to take you a while to watch this. There is a ton of courtroom stuff in it, like the courtroom proceedings, the jury selection. There's a lot of lawyer meetings, like them getting together and kind of talking strategy. And I'm somewhat interested in that kind of stuff to a certain point. I mean, I would say out of the 13 episodes, I would say if you compiled all of the courtroom and all of the lawyer meetings, that is probably, it would make up about 5 or 6 episodes of it. Like, it's a lot. And it's interesting to a certain point, like I said. And if you're interested in that type of stuff, I definitely would suggest checking this out because it's definitely an interesting case. Like I said, the shady blood spatter guy. And at one point, Michael Peterson actually was in the army and he was stationed in Germany. And one of his friends actually had a brain aneurysm and she died at the bottom of the staircase. And so like the DA was trying to make a connection between those two things. So it is interesting. Like there is a lot of twists and turns in this case, but do I think it needed 13 episodes? Absolutely not. I was bored most of the way through watching this show because it was so long and there was just so much courtroom and lawyer meetings in this show. There needed to be 6-7 episodes tops. And there was 13.
Yeah, so when you talked about Evil Genius, that really piqued my interest. And every time I get on Netflix, I come really close to starting it. And I know that I'll watch it eventually. And it sounds like it's a pretty straightforward story. Like you said, 4 or 5, 6 episodes, nothing crazy, no insane commitment there. This sounds brutal. 13 episodes of courtroom drama does not sound like something that I'm too terribly interested in. Like, I'm kind of curious about the story as you talked about it, but something like Evil Genius sounds like it might be more my speed as far as true crime documentaries go.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I would definitely suggest if there's a shorter version of this out there, definitely check it out, or maybe just read his Wikipedia page or something like that, because it is definitely not worth it. I guess there's a movie made about it, but really? It was, I guess it came out a couple of years ago, so I guess it wouldn't have involved the last little bit of it. I think it was called the Staircase Murders, but I'm not sure. I haven't watched it, so I don't know how good that is, but maybe that's more your speed.
I remember a movie called The People Under the Stairs. Does that count?
I don't think that's it. I'm going to take a shot in the dark that's not about Michael Peterson.
It is not, but did you ever see that movie when you were younger?
I did not.
I want to say that Wes Craven did it. But yeah, it's just a cheesy 80s. Yeah, written and directed by Wes Craven. It came out in 91. So I kind of went off the rails there a little bit, but
yeah, that would be creepy if that was about the thing, because the murder or supposed accident didn't happen until like 02 or 03. So apparently Wes Craven could see the future.
No, I'm pretty sure that The People Under the Stairs are about people that are kept captive under the stairs in some dude's house. So I might be off base there, but yeah, nothing related there.
Okay. Now that we had that little tangent aside, let's go ahead and move right into comics. So what'd you read this week?
I'm going to talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp #2, but in doing so, I'm going to kind of talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp #1 as well, because I think that just came out like last week or 2 weeks ago. So it hasn't been out too incredibly long. So whenever Ant-Man and the Wasp #1 came out a few weeks ago, for whatever reason, I ended up discussing something else. Something else had piqued my interest a little bit more. I wasn't thrilled with issue #1, but I thought I'd give the story another chance with issue #2. And overall, I'm pretty bummed that I spent the extra $4 on issue 2, because this portion of the story did nothing to capture my imagination or attention, similar to issue 1. So to start off, this is not the Ant-Man and the Wasp that we're used to. It's not Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne or Scott Lang and Hope Van Dyne like in the movies. This arc incarnation sees Scott Lang partnering with Hank Pym's long-lost daughter, Nadia Van Dyne. Apparently, I did some research because I had never heard of her. She's a newer character. She appeared for the first time in 2016 in the Civil War II storyline, I guess. So she's not a character that's been around for too incredibly long. Basically, her backstory is that she is the daughter of Hank Pym's first wife, and that Hank never knew she existed. And then her mom ends up dying, and she was raised in the Red Room, which is, of course, where Black Widow was also raised. She ends up escaping the Red Room, comes back to America as a teenager, and ends up being raised by Janet Van Dyne. Then she ends up taking on the Wasp moniker and the Van Dyne last name because Janet loved and supported her, and she doesn't know much else about her background. So that's the convoluted background of Nadia Van Dyne that's going on in this comic. So unlike the character of Hope in the Ant-Man movies, there is no romance between her and Scott because she is quite a bit younger than him. She might not even be 18 yet in the comic. I can't remember, but that dynamic to me also already makes things like a little weird. It's like a weird kind of creepy like relationship that they have. It is not romantic, but it does definitely give off some weird vibes because I think in this comic, Scott is in his mid to late 30s. But the part of the story that I dislike the most is that this is a space adventure. And that's not really something that I want to see with Ant-Man and the Wasp. So basically, throughout these first 2 issues, Nadia is trying to help Scott get home from space. And then something subatomic goes wrong and gets in their way. And to give you an idea of how strange this story gets, issue 2 picks up with Scott shrunk down inside of Nadia's head, trying to fix an issue with her optical nerves because she can't see and her eyes have turned red due to an incident in the first issue. So not only is that really weird storytelling to me, but it makes absolutely no sense because why would you let a little man into the back of your head to start fucking with your optical nerves? Like it's from a...
Yeah, he has no medical training whatsoever.
Yeah, he's a thief. He doesn't know what the fuck he's doing back there. He could make things worse. So things like that are littered throughout these first 2 issues, and it really bugged me, especially because I like the Ant-Man run from a couple years ago so much. I think that what's most disappointing, though, is that this book was written by Mark Waid, who is normally amazing. Like, I usually love the stuff that he writes. I will go ahead and put the artist out there since we've been in the habit of doing that. It's drawn by Javier Garron, who does a decent job, but there's just not enough to keep me interested here. And I think that this kind of falls into the camp that we've talked about a lot recently, which is a comic coming around to cash in on a movie coming out, which is really disappointing again, because I think Mark Waid is a great writer and it's just not showing up here. So I would definitely skip Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Yeah, that's definitely disappointing. It's very weird. First of all, that Scott Lang is basically a pedophile, but no, it's kind of funny because I was training a new employee at work recently, and it turns out I used to do I have a teaching degree and all that good stuff, and I had to do student teaching, and I knew her from somewhere, but I couldn't quite nail it down, and it turns out she was one of my former students, which first of all is weird. Second of all, it made me feel a little old for the first time. I don't care about my age. It is what it is. But I just was like, wow, that was really that long ago. But yeah, it's just kind of weird because I'll have people come up to me like, "Oh man, she's really good looking." I'm like, "That's weird for me." I knew her when she was 15, so I'm gonna just take myself out of this conversation. But yeah, so Scott Lang apparently is a pedophile. But it just seems weird because what I really like about that character is, and of course he was part of the Avengers, and the Wasp was a founding member of the Avengers, is the fact that at least the most recent run kind of felt like more, I don't want to say separate stories, but kind of ground level. It didn't seem like it was that, it didn't really deal with all of the the huge consequences in the Marvel comic universe. It kind of felt like it was more ground level, almost kind of the same way that the Black Panther movie felt like it was different from stuff that we were seeing in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that's kind of how I felt about the most recent run of Ant-Man. And to find out that he's in space is really fucking weird, because that's complete opposite side of the spectrum.
Yeah, it definitely caught me off guard. I don't know why you would make a creative choice like that, especially if you're trying to tie into a movie that seems like it's going to be very ground level. So, yeah, to say I was disappointed would be an understatement for sure. So, what did you read?
Okay, so my comic section is going to be very short because I don't have much to say about this book because there wasn't much of a book to talk about. So I was desperate this week. I'm going to be real honest with you. And I was kind of scrolling through Comixology as I do every week. And I stumbled across something that kind of caught my eye called The Lost City Explorers. And they always say that you're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but I read a little bit of an intro about this book, and I was like, okay, cool. it kind of gave me, at least the cover did, kind of gave me like a Stranger Things, like Goonies vibe. Turns out the people in the cover are a little bit older than that, like they're not kids, but it kind of definitely gave me that feel to it. So I was like, oh man, I love Stranger Things. I don't really care for the Goonies, but I really like Stranger Things quite a lot. So I was like, man, maybe I'll like this. But essentially, it is about a group of scientists that are trying to discover the lost city of Atlantis. And of course, an accident happens, and one of them gets trapped on the other side. And speaking of people not being trained to do something, essentially their kids are recruited to go help get him back, essentially.
Oh, wow.
Which sounds a lot more exciting than the book actually was, because none of that actually happens in this issue. It's basically just exactly what we say number one shouldn't ever be, which is just really exposition heavy and setting up everything that's going to come along. But this is, from what I understand, a completely original project, so they don't have like intrigue to fall back on. Like, if this was like a Spider-Man book, I'd be like, okay, well, I'm going to give it another issue because I trust that this character is going to come up or something cool is going to happen because it's Spider-Man or it's Batman or it's whoever. But this doesn't have that. So I don't give a shit about any of these characters. So the fact that you're just teasing stuff doesn't really do anything for me, because you had this one issue to grab me and you didn't come even close to grabbing me at all. And it was really, really bad. So I will say we've been trying to note the author and the artist. Not that I think after this review they're going to necessarily want to put their names on it, but the guy that wrote it is a guy named Zach Kaplan, and then the artist, and I'm going to butcher this, is Alvaro Saraseca. There's no way I said that right. But this was put out by Aftershock Comics, which I think I've read one or two of their other books, and I don't think that I was very impressed by those either. I want to say that A Walk Through Hell might have been Aftershock as well, a book that I talked about a few episodes ago, and I didn't like it. I didn't like that book either. So kind of the same reasons that I didn't like this book. I think I might have liked that book a little bit more because stuff actually happened. Not a ton of stuff, but stuff actually happened in that book. There is nothing in this book that would ever make me want to read the second issue.
Yeah, sounds pretty bad. Did you say who put this out? What publisher?
Aftershock. Okay. I literally just said it like 30 seconds ago.
Yeah. I was trying to listen for it. I'm not familiar with Aftershock, so it must have gotten by me. But I was looking at Comixology as well this week, and there were a few. I didn't realize Comixology had like their own imprint.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe this was one of those, and that their imprint is just on really crappy comics. But it sounds like it's just an Aftershock thing. So.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was called, but it was between this comic and the Comixology original that had just come out, and I cannot remember what it's called, and I'm curious to find out if I made the wrong. Well, if they're both terrible, then whatever. But yeah. It seems like the bar is set really low that I made the bad decision.
Yeah, definitely sounds bad, man.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right, so you ready for nerd news?
Yeah, what do you got this week?
So a few different stories. The first one came from Tom Holland yesterday at the Ace Comic-Con in Seattle. He kind of did like a funny little Instagram video where he was saying that he felt bad that there was nothing that he could say about the Spider-Man Homecoming sequel. But he says that he just got the script and he's going to read it, and he shows his iPad to the screen and it has the title of the sequel on it. So it's like a little joke about how, he always leaks everything about these movies, but the title that is on the script that he's reading is Spider-Man Far From Home. And they had previously said that the sequel to Homecoming might be like a type of globe-trotting adventure. So I guess this title would make sense in that regard. I don't know about you, but I don't know that I really want to see Spider-Man globe-trotting. I'd rather just see him.
Don't.
Yeah, I mean, even the stuff in Homecoming where he goes to Washington, D.C., like, I get it. Like, he's there for a class trip, and it makes sense. But even that's, like, I just want to see him swinging around New York, saving New York. So that's kind of my thought on it. I mean, I trust Marvel, obviously, but yeah, I definitely don't want to see him globetrotting.
No, definitely. I mean, he's the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He's not the friendly worldwide Spider-Man. Like, let Iron Man do that. Let Captain America do that. Like, I don't want to see Spider-Man do that. Like, when I think of Spider-Man, the second thing that you think of is New York. So I don't like that at all. And I just think it's funny because I had a woman come up to me at work the other day and we just like, she was telling me this like theory about what they're gonna do to bring back everybody that we lost in quotes from Infinity War, and I was like, yeah, I know all like you're telling me all this stuff that I was like. I looked at it, I was like, they're already working on another Spider-Man movie. They're already working on another Black Panther movie. Like, they're coming back. She was just like so worried, and like she thought she was gonna put me at ease. That I was like, lady, I know, like I'm good. Like, she was really sweet about it, but I was just like, I got you. We're good. I know that. I knew that before Infinity War came along. That's why it didn't hit me as hard as I think it hit some people.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite stories from a couple weeks ago was Chris Pratt was being interviewed and said that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 might be a prequel to Infinity War, kind of trying to save face, like, oh no, maybe everybody really is dead after Infinity War. And then James Gunn tweeted, no, it takes place after Infinity War, and just kind of like shot it all down. So, I mean, obviously, something's got to happen next year, and yeah, I mean, we'll see then. Like, I still look forward to that movie and look forward to how they deal with the consequences of Infinity War, and I don't want it to be focused completely on how we get these characters back, because I think that movie set up a really cool story for Avengers 4.
For sure. But I would like to see them get it out of the way early in that movie, so it's not something that's just kind of hanging in the air for a while.
Yeah. You would imagine, though, that the movie's going to be about them coming up with a plan to bring everybody back, and then that's the climax, is they bring everybody back and there's a big fight or something.
Sure, but I don't want it just to be sitting there the whole time.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. So speaking of Spider-Man, Sony is also developing a Silk movie. For those of you who don't know who Silk is, her name is Cindy Moon. She was a classmate of Peter Parker's and also got bit by a radioactive spider. She is Korean American, so this would be a big deal because it would be our first Korean American superheroine on screen. As for the character itself, I don't know where you kind of fall on all of this spider nonsense. I mean, obviously we're getting an animated movie in December called Into the Spider-Verse. It's going to show all of these different incarnations of the character, but I think at a certain point, you got to stop giving these powers to other people. So I wouldn't say that I'm not looking forward to a Silk movie, but, you know, they've been trying to do this Black Cat, Silver Sable movie that's not coming together, and a couple others, and I just don't know that this will ever get off the ground.
I think it's a cool idea. I talk shit about Dan Slott a lot, but I really enjoyed his Spider-Verse event thing that he did a while back, and I mean, it was probably a couple of years ago. It did get kind of silly because there was like pig Spider-Man and stuff like that. So I think that was kind of a nod to the Simpsons movie, or at least I wanted it to be a nod to the Simpsons movie. But yeah, so it got a little silly, but the payoff was really cool. I really enjoyed that event, and I'm very excited for Into the Spider-Verse. I think it looks amazing. I don't think we talked about the second trailer on here, or maybe you are going to talk about it today?
No, I don't. I think that I had it for Nerd News the week of PopCon, and then we didn't do Nerd News, so I just
okay, I got you. Yeah, that was kind of a big week for trailers too. So yeah, I did watch it. I'm really, really excited about it. I think that she's an interesting character, but it feels like Sony is really trying to scrape the bottom of the barrel right now, though. Like, I definitely don't think that she's a character that can hold her own movie. So there's that, but she's definitely interesting. I just don't know if you can just make a full feature-length movie about her.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. They said it's in the early stages, so
it's not going to get made.
Yeah, it may not. So we'll see. Let's see. Moving along, Jordan Peele is flirting with the idea of making a sequel to Get Out. So I was kind of curious what your thoughts are there. I kind of have mixed feelings. I think that, something that good should just be left alone. But if he's the one that's creatively behind it and he feels confident in the story that he comes up with, like, more power to him. That's his creation. So I'd be interested to see and where you go from there. But I think that at the end of the day, it's not something that I'm clamoring for.
Oh, no. And I'm definitely in that camp as well. Like, you should just leave it be. It sounds like it was something that he had been writing for a long, long time and kind of put down and brought back up. And so something like that, it seems like if the studio wanted a sequel, it's not going to be something that they're going to wait another 6, 7, 8 years to get. It's going to be something that they're going to want to rush back into development before people forget about the first one. Because we see that all the time where sequels to, especially horror movies, come out a long time after the first one and nobody gives a shit. Like The Strangers Pray at Night is the perfect example. Now, it sounded like that movie was garbage, so it didn't necessarily need to be made, but that came out, 10 years after the first one came out? So at least close to it, so people kind of just forgot about it. So I'd be curious to see how long they're going to give him to decide and kind of create the perfect script for the sequel. But it seems like he's more interested in the shit ton of money that they're going to probably give him to make this movie, because the first one made just a crazy amount of money for a horror small budget movie. So I think that there's enough there, but I'm definitely in the camp that movie is amazing. Just leave it what it is.
Yeah. For sure, man. I think we're on the same page there. So, let's see. The last story I'll go ahead and go with today concerns our love-hate relationship with Moviepass. So, we've talked a lot about how much we love Moviepass, and there have been instances where we've talked about how much we hated Moviepass. So, in the spirit of being equal opportunity headline talkers, I don't know what we are when we do this segment, but whatever we are, I did want to bring up the shitty stuff that Moviepass is doing right now, and then how some other movie chains are trying to combat it. So Moviepass has come up with demand pricing, which is similar to Uber. Like, if you were Ubering from an event and everybody wants an Uber, the prices are going to be a lot higher. So their train of thought is that if you go to see a new release movie on like a Friday or Saturday night and everybody wants to go see that movie, that you're going to pay an extra $1 to $2 when you do that. So obviously it was not met with acceptance from its consumer. Like, I think that that's pretty shitty, because we knew something like this was going to happen eventually. Like, in the terms and the agreements of their relaunch at $10 a month, they pretty much said they have the right to change the price at any point. So, this is probably better than the alternative of them spiking it back up to $30 or something. But at the end of the day, like, it's just people feel like they can't trust Moviepass. In regards to that, AMC, and I think you know more about it, so I'll let you chime in here, but AMC is coming up with their own type of subscription service. They already had Stubs, but basically for $20 a month, you're able to see any movie you want, 3D, IMAX, doesn't matter, anytime, no restrictions. I forget what it's called, so maybe you can help me out there. But
Stubs A-List is what it's called. You can see 3 movies a week, and so obviously that's a little bit more money for less movies, but you can do advanced ticketing, which is the thing that I'm most excited for, because Tyler and I talk about this a lot off recording, so essentially it didn't happen, but we talk about how it's super annoying having the Moviepass and wanting to go see a movie like Jurassic World that we're about to review. Like, I had to buy a ticket because I knew, obviously, we were going to record Sunday morning. I knew at some point Saturday I had to go see this movie. And with it being such a huge movie, like, I didn't want to miss out on a seat because I knew we were going to be recording. So I kind of had that deadline, and I was checking all of the showings last night, and the 10 o'clock showing was almost sold out. So I had to buy my ticket, and it seemed silly because I have this thing where I can use it and get a free movie ticket, but I had to buy it just to make sure that I got a seat because I knew we were going to be recording this tomorrow. So with Moviepass, that's a big thing for me. Like, that's a big thing that I don't get is the advance tickets. So you can do that with the A-list. You can also see any type of movie that you want. They don't restrict you at all, which is a thing that we countered when we went to Indy and went and saw a movie at the AMC Indianapolis, because apparently they have this weird pricing where there's Vanguard and like premium seating, where the Vanguard is like the first like 3 or 4 rows and the premium seating is the rest of the theater, the good seats. And according to Moviepass, that makes it a premiere screening. So we actually waited all day to go see this movie, and then it turns out we ended up seeing Hereditary. It turns out that we couldn't even use our Moviepass for it because it was technically a premium screening. So that's something that you wouldn't have to worry about with AMC, but you don't obviously get as many to watch. Oh, and I'm sorry, I forgot that they don't give a shit what movie you see. So you could literally, if you wanted to go see Infinity War 3 times in a week, they don't give a fuck that you go see that 3 times a week. They don't care what movie it is. You just have 3 screenings.
Yeah, and that's a big deal. Like that, because I mean, I talked about whenever we reviewed Deadpool 2, my experience with Moviepass and Deadpool 2. I'm pretty sure we did that on while we recorded, but if not, we talked about it off recording. And basically, the summary of that story is I got fucked over by Moviepass. So if I had an AMC closer to where I live, I would definitely probably switch over. But I'm going to roll the dice, keep using Moviepass as long as it's profitable for me to do so. But yeah, it's just a shady company, and they're really struggling to break even at this point. I think I read that they need like $1 or $2 billion to break even at this point. So they've got to do something, but it's at the cost of their consumer. So I can't imagine that they're going to be around this time next year.
Yeah, and something that you didn't mention with this story is they added, I think, 2 more things with the demand or surge pricing or whatever I've heard it called 2 different things. Is that you could also bring a friend, but I mean, they're going to charge you extra. And then you can also go see premium, like 2 or 3D and like IMAX starting soon, I guess. And obviously that would be an upcharge as well. So I am actually considering getting the A-list and dropping Moviepass because I'm pretty much done with them. Just some of the stuff that I just talked about with the advanced ticketing and the whole premium bullshit that we had to deal with in Indy. Honestly, I'm going to be so pissed when I see that little charge come out of my bank account for the first time, the little demand pricing or whatever. Like if I had seen Moviepass or if I had seen Jurassic World with Moviepass last night, I probably would have gotten charged. And that's just 100%. So shitty to me. The only problem with that is a lot of times I'm just sitting around Saturday night bored and I'm like, oh man, I'll just go see what's playing right now. And I have a movie theater that is literally 3 minutes from my house. And the AMC in town is probably at least 20 minutes away from my house. So it's like, I don't have that option just to get up and just go and see a movie in 10 minutes anymore if I got rid of the Moviepass. That's the big thing, is that it would be quite the, like, okay, now I have to actually plan my day around this because I have a 45-minute trip round trip to go to AMC. So it does become a little bit more of a hassle, but ultimately I think because of the Moviepass and all the bullshit, at some point, I just don't want to support the company anymore. Like, because that's the only way that consumers get to kind of voice their displeasure, is just not supporting it anymore. So I would rather support AMC than support Moviepass.
Yeah, and that's what the irritating thing is, Moviepass will update their profile picture on Facebook, and there will be hundreds of comments just tearing them apart. But all of those people, I mean, and to a certain extent, including me, are going to keep using it. So, they're able to get away with this stuff. So, maybe I'm part of the problem. But like I said, if I had an AMC closer by, I'd probably make the switch. So, yeah, we'll see how this continues to unfold. I'm sure this is not the last step they're going to take to piss people off. So,
oh, and you don't have to have a stupid debit card for AMC too. I forgot about that.
That is nice. So I'm assuming you don't have to check in, take a picture of your ticket.
No.
You just
I have a story about that. So I didn't do that for whatever the last movie I saw with Moviepass, it wouldn't obviously have been Jurassic World. It would have been the other one. What movie would I have seen? Oh, Incredibles 2. I used my Moviepass for Incredibles 2, and I checked in and everything, and I had the Moviepass app open, ready. I went in to walk in to get my ticket, got my ticket, sat down at my seat in the movie theater, and I went to go take the picture, and the app crashed. And then I could not figure out how to get back to the picture thing, the screen to take my picture for my movie stub. And I was just like, okay, well, I guess I'm not doing that. I'm sure I'm going to get an email about that. So I never did, because I'm sure they give you a couple before they start warning you or whatever. But yeah, I was like, well, there's something that's going to probably happen, because I have no faith in Moviepass whatsoever.
I had the same thing happen, and I had to contact customer service, and they said, well, just send us a picture here. And I did.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that.
But yeah, I don't blame you. If I wouldn't have done that, I doubt anything would have happened. So
yeah, nothing happened to me, and I wouldn't have cared anyways, because if they had sent me a movie, it's almost like I'm daring them to do something, because I am like that close to canceling it. So it's like, oh, if you sent me that email, I would have just canceled right then.
Yeah, I already, I'm pretty patient with people in customer service, because I've worked in customer service my whole life. But I got in a fight with Moviepass customer service over the Deadpool 2 stuff. So, I mean, I think that shows how pissed off I was and how terrible they were about it. So it's just the company, I used to praise their customer service, because you would be able to call and they would take care of whatever you needed back whenever it was $30 a month.
Yep.
But now it's just a shit show, and nobody likes them, but everybody uses them. So we'll see again how this unfolds.
For sure. All right, so that was longer than I thought we were going to talk about Moviepass, but that's cool. We're obviously pretty pissed off about it, so it kind of makes sense. But kind of moving on to our main topic, which of course changes from episode to episode. We will be reviewing a lot of movies, because there's a lot of stuff coming out in the next few weeks. Of course, we just talked about going to see Jurassic World, and that's obviously what we're going to be reviewing, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, which of course is a sequel to Jurassic World. It is directed by, and this is like a lot of episodes, this is going to be a bad episode for me trying to pronounce people's names, but it was directed by J.A. Bayana, which there's no way. He did The Orphanage, which is a movie that was marketed as a horror movie, not really a horror movie, but it's a pretty cool movie. And then Monster Calls, which looked really cool, but I never saw it because it came out right as my mom passed away, and it's about a mom dying, and I was just like, nah, brah, I don't want to have a complete breakdown in the movie theater. So I'm still not quite ready to go see a movie like that. So I occasionally see it on Netflix or something else, and I'm like, I was interested in that movie, but yeah, I'm not sure I would want to just completely break down, because my brain is broken since that happened. I cry at a lot of things that I wouldn't have, so that seems like a bad idea. But anyways, I kind of went on a little weird tangent there. Anyways, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom is, of course, it stars Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard. They're back as Owen and Claire, who must lead a rescue mission to save the dinos from the abandoned Jurassic World Park before a volcano destroys the island. And honestly, I felt kind of weird going into this movie, because I love Jurassic Park. I love that movie. It's probably, obviously it didn't make my top 10 when we did that list a few years back, but it's pretty damn close. I really love that movie, and the way that they do the practical effects, and it looks so fucking cool for a movie to come out like that in the 90s. It's so fucking far ahead of its time. It would look good today, which just completely blows me away. But the franchise as a whole has put out a lot of garbage. So it's you have this amazing movie, and then the rest of it, they're not necessarily bad movies, but compared to the original, there's a lot of garbage there. And I liked Jurassic World, I think, a little bit more than most people did. I thought it was fun. It definitely did have its dumb moments, for sure. And those dumb moments definitely amplified when you see him when you've watched the movie a couple of times, but it just when I put the movie in the few times I've seen it since we saw it in the theaters, I just kind of like, okay, I'm gonna have to turn my brain off a little bit and watch this movie, but it's still pretty cool. Chris Pratt is not as bad as I thought he was gonna be when we first saw the trailers, but I don't know, I just felt weird going into this movie because I wasn't sure I was gonna like it just because. Yeah, Jurassic World is fun, but it's also kind of dumb as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. Jurassic Park did not make my top 10, but I think that if we did a top 15, it would have a really good shot of being in there. Like, that movie is amazing. It holds up. Like, everybody our age that were kids when that movie came out, we're just, in awe of it. And that continued into adulthood. Like, just love that movie. But like you said, from there, not a great track record. I did like Jurassic World as well, too. Like, I think that if you go back and listen to our Jurassic World review, we probably both give it pretty positive reviews, and I stand by that. Like, I think that it's a fun movie, despite some of its flaws, and I like the idea of it being like, okay, the park came together, it's open, like, what could possibly go wrong? The problem is, we've seen that too many times at this point, and they're really stretching here, and I don't really want to get into my Jurassic World 2 review in this little portion of the review just yet. But yeah, it's the franchise as a whole does not have a great track record. We'll just say that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And let's just jump right into the actual review itself. We start off each one of these reviews by kind of just giving a general overview. We call it broad strokes. So how'd you feel about Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom?
So overall, this is not a great movie. Anytime.
Nope.
Anytime you go to see a Jurassic Park movie, you know what you're going to be in for to a certain extent. And this one is no different. I will say that any surprises that did come around in this movie were shown in the promotional material. So
yep.
So yeah, so you're left with a story where you know exactly what's going to happen and you can follow along beat by beat given the scenes you saw in the trailer. So this movie is definitely messy. There's no charisma in this movie and the plot always doesn't make much sense. So obviously I'm going to get into the specifics when we get to the story portion of our review, but I was definitely pretty disappointed with the results of Fallen Kingdom.
Oh yeah, we're on the same page as we usually are with this movie. I actually never thought, as much as I don't really like some of the stuff in the original Jurassic Park sequels, I was never bored by those movies. And I never thought that I could be bored by a Jurassic Park movie just because, they're fucking dinosaurs. How can you make dinosaurs boring? This movie did the impossible. They made a Jurassic Park movie fucking boring. This movie is so boring. Now, granted, I saw it, like I said earlier, I saw it at 10 o'clock. I work on Saturday, so I was up at like 5:30. So take it with a grain of salt, but I had a really, really hard time staying awake during this movie. I was really bored. They don't even feel like they're trying anymore. Like, they legitimately, every part of this movie felt phoned in. There's very little plot to begin with. Especially, there's almost nothing to differentiate from The Lost World. Like, I know a lot of people are making that comparison, obviously, because in The Lost World, they take the dinosaurs from the island and bring them to the actual, like, civilization. And that's what they do in this movie. And I'm not spoiling anything because you fucking see that in the trailer, like you said. So they already had that hurdle. And I guess they were just like, fuck it. Everybody's going to compare it to Lost World anyways. So let's not even try to make it different. So they pretty much phoned in every single thing about this movie. And honestly, my biggest complaint, as it normally is with these types of movies, is the script itself. It felt like a 30-minute script padded by like 1,000 dino action sequences, like to make it a 2-hour movie, because there's almost no plot in this movie whatsoever. And normally I'd be like, man, I love dino action sequences. But again, they managed to make that even boring in this movie.
Oh, I completely agree.
All right, so let's just jump right into the story. As always, this usually is going to be the longest segment of all of our reviews.
So I'll preface this by saying this movie was co-written by Colin Trevorrow, who was very, very close to writing and directing episode 9. So dodged a bullet there.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The story of this movie is awful. I don't think that it necessarily ever knows what it wants to be. And most of the story was to get to the point at the end of the movie, which I'm not going to spoil, but the story involved from point A to point B is convoluted and silly when you really take a step back and evaluate character decisions. When you go back to the original Jurassic Park, you have a movie that's a lot of fun and forces the main characters to survive on an island where everything is going wrong. And you kind of get that similar feeling in Jurassic World, which we were just talking about, which is why I think I walked away from that movie really enjoying it more than I thought I would have. However, in this movie, everything that our heroes are up against is because of terrible decisions that they keep making. And at what point as a moviegoer can you continue to forgive that? They managed to shave this movie down to something that doesn't feel like a Jurassic Park movie. And in doing so, the fun is removed. And that's what goes back to what you were just saying. Like, you go to these movies to kind of just turn your brain off a little bit and see some dinosaur action. But whenever you remove all the fun, it's just boring. And how do you make a boring movie about dinosaurs? So I think that they've reached a point where there is no creativity around what they're doing with these movies, and they have to keep making them because they make money. I appreciate that they did something in this movie with a scenery change, but everything that leads up to that and everything that follows that decision is a creative mess. I'm just really tired of these movies being about good guy and bad guy scientists. The whole formula is pretty played out, and even when they try to put a different spin on it, like this movie, it just feels super corny. I think that at this point, I'm ranting instead of actually reviewing the story, but I want to make sure not to spoil anything, I guess, so I'm trying not to get into specifics. So I guess if I have to sum up the story, it's just that, to me, it doesn't work. The wonder and excitement of us living amongst dinosaurs just isn't there in this movie, and it was a bummer for sure, because any movie we review, we want to go into liking, especially a movie with a history like this, or a part of a franchise that has a history, I guess you'd say, but it's just not there in this one.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like I said earlier, with the first Jurassic World movie, like, it does have its dumb moments, but I think honestly, it's a fun movie. Like, it's like 60-40 fun and then 40% dumb. Like, you do have to kind of turn your brain off a little bit at certain parts and kind of just forgive that you're going to roll your eyes a little bit at some of this, like the scientist stuff, like the Vince, the what's his last name? God damn it.
Vincent D'Onofrio?
Yes, that whole subplot I don't care about at all. And I just kind of like tune it out when I rewatch this movie. And unfortunately, I feel like they kind of flipped it a little bit. Like, most of this movie is fucking stupid, and only like 40, maybe even 30% is fun. Like, it's not great. They definitely didn't tote that line well in this movie versus the original Jurassic World movies. So I feel like, first of all, we kind of talked about this a little bit with the trailer when we first discussed the trailer, because of course Jeff Goldblum is in the trailer. His part is fucking stupid. It's so stupid. Like we said, we're excited that he's in this movie again, but we really hope that it's not some dumb, like, testifying at Congress, like, cameo, and that's exactly what it is. So if you go into this movie thinking you're going to get a lot of Jeff Goldblum, you're going to be extremely disappointed. So that was that. Like, that kind of set me up to being disappointed in this movie, because once you see him, you're like, okay, this is going to be the only thing that happens. And honestly, let's be real, he talked for a little bit. He didn't really say anything. Like, he just was saying words that sounded cool, but he wasn't really saying anything. Like, yeah, he's Jeff Goldblum, so pretty much anything that he could say is going to be cool. Like, I'm pretty sure he could read the ingredients off a cereal box and still make it sound cool. But yeah, he wasn't really saying a whole lot. So that was definitely disappointing. And my big thing, and I guess you could say this about a lot of Jurassic Park movies, and I mean, you could pretty much say it about everyone except for the first one, in the world that we live in with PTSD being such a big deal and people kind of accepting it as a mainstream kind of disease, like people aren't just questioning it as they used to, why would you have a movie where characters go back to like the most traumatic thing that they've ever done in their entire lives? Like, there's no way. I mean, I get that Claire cares about these dinosaurs. I get that they try to like thinly make the connection between Owen and Blue. Like, they at least try. That's one of the few things in this movie that they legitimately try to make that connection. There's absolutely no fucking way that you would ever get me to go back to that island. There's just absolutely no way. And it's hard to make me believe that anyone would. Like, that's the most unrealistic thing that you could do in this movie. And honestly, like, the more I thought about it, the more they could have gone a PTSD angle and made these characters a lot more interesting. And of course, they didn't care to do that. Like I said, it feels like they're phoning everything in at this point. And the scientists creating a different type of dinosaur, that stuff is really stupid in the first one, and they kind of take it up a notch in this one. And so that was definitely disappointing. But the thing that bothered me the most that you didn't bring up, and I don't know if you didn't bring it up because you didn't want to spoil anything. I'm not going to go in particulars about this particular character, but the fucking twist about the little girl is the dumbest fucking thing that I've seen in a movie in a long time. First of all, really just stupid. Second of all, it doesn't do anything for the movie whatsoever. It's supposed to be like this big twist at the end, and it doesn't do anything. Literally the only reason that this girl is in this movie is because pretty much every Jurassic Park movie has had a kid running away from the dinosaurs, and that's all that she's in this movie for. And they try to make a thin attempt to make her character matter, and it was the dumbest fucking thing that they could have possibly ever done. And they want us to care about it, and I did not care about it at all. And it was just really, really fucking stupid.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up a lot of good points there, and I was trying not to go into plot specifics, but I think at a certain point, the genetic modification of dinosaurs is really dumb, and they keep relying pretty heavily on that. So I hate that. I also hated the twist with the little girl, but there was a split second where I thought maybe they were going to say she was like a dino human hybrid, and that would have been even stupider than what they came up with.
So I guess they did go the dumbest route.
Yeah, well, I think we talked about it on the podcast before Jurassic World. At one point, there was a Jurassic Park sequel with a script that was floating around with like dinosaur human hybrid soldiers. And they've gotten kind of close to it in these movies with how they're trying to weaponize dinosaurs. And I thought that was the route they were going to go. So it didn't quite get that stupid, but it was still pretty stupid.
But I guess you could say that about any movie. Like this movie, they could have been dead the whole time. Like you could make dumber things. But I feel like in the constructs of this movie, that was, oh my God, that was so stupid. I was like, oh my God, are you fucking kidding me? I waited this long and you teased this little girl this whole time. And this was what you gave me? Like it was so stupid. I was like, I hated this movie before, but I definitely hate this movie now.
So the character of Lockwood, that's his name, right? The old guy's name?
Yes.
Was he ever brought up?
See, that's the thing, like, movie? I love these movies. I've seen these movies 100 times. I had no fucking idea. Like, I literally talked about that with my wife this morning. She didn't end up going to see it with me because I had to go to the 10 o'clock showing, and she's not a really big fan of these movies anyways. So we're getting a divorce now. I was just telling her, I was like, I guess he had a partner, but I don't remember that ever being a thing.
Yeah, so it's almost like, and you'll have to forgive me, I know that the actor that played, oh my God, I'm just having a brain fart, but the actor that died, who played the big part in Jurassic Park, you know, he passed away in real life recently, so obviously you can't bring him back, but that's felt really forced to have like this character that was his partner, but then nobody ever talked about. Hammond was the guy's name, so.
Yeah. I thought you were talking about the actor's name. Because I could have given you his character's name, yeah.
Richard Attenborough is his name. He died in 2014, so not too crazy long ago. But I guess the point of it is it all felt really forced.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And definitely let us know, tweet at us, comment, Facebook, or whatever you want to do, if he is mentioned in the other movies, because that was something it bothered me after I got out of the movie. It was like, have they ever mentioned his character before? Because I didn't know he had a partner. Like, is that something that they came up with in this movie? And I'm glad that you brought that up, because I guess I'm not the only one that thought that. So my guess is that he didn't, and they've never mentioned him before, because us being big Jurassic Park fans and we didn't catch it, it's either very, very like a small mention, or they just made him up for this movie.
I'm sure they made him up for this movie, but I'll be a little bit more impressed if he was mentioned before. So we'll see.
For sure. All right. So that's all I got for story. If you want to just move on to performances, how'd you feel about the performances in this movie?
I don't really have much here. Like, I don't think that they're necessarily really, really bad performances here.
Oh, really?
I think that
I thought Chris Pratt was really bad.
I think he's underutilized. Like, that's what I don't get about this character from him in these Jurassic World movies, is he's such a charismatic guy and he's funny, and then you don't let him do that in these movies very much. So I don't like that. I think that Jeff Goldblum was completely underused, like you said. I remember after seeing that first trailer, I thought to myself, like, surely he's going to be used more than just like in this courtroom scene. But like you said, he is not. So that was super disappointing. But yeah, I mean, I don't have much to say about the performances. Like, they're fine. Chris Pratt is the biggest red flag for me.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, when we first saw the Jurassic World trailer years ago, we kind of said, hey, this might be a bad step for Chris Pratt, because at the time he was Star-Lord in Guardians of the Galaxy, and he was the biggest movie star. He was in the Lego movie, all this good stuff, and obviously he still is the biggest movie star, at least one of the biggest movie stars out there. We're like, well, maybe this was a misstep. Maybe this is kind of the chink in his armor or whatever. Like, he's not that great of an actor. And ultimately, I think that he was fine in Jurassic World. Like you said, they don't ask him to do what he's good at, which is being Andy Dwyer, John McClane, that type of, like, he's an action hero. Well, I guess Andy Dwyer's not an action hero, but you get my drift. He's a funny guy who can be also this action hero. They just don't let him be that guy in these movies, and I think he was fine in Jurassic World. I thought he was completely just stale and stiff in this movie. Like, he was just, like I said, I feel like every aspect of this movie was just phoned in, and that's including his performance. And I don't know his name, but the IT guy, I thought he was actually pretty cool. Like, I thought that he did a pretty good job, and he kind of was that comic relief a lot of the movie. I thought it was kind of funny that he kept having to, like, go off and do his own, like, he had to be the scientist helper, or like he had to help, like, unload the boat at one point. Like, I thought that was kind of a funny little thing, and they never really, like, made it a big deal, which was kind of like one of the few things that I kind of liked about the movie, but I did appreciate his character a little bit. But other than that, I think everybody just was phoning it in.
I mean, I appreciate his character from the standpoint that he played the role of the scared, useless, smart guy, and that they didn't give that to a female character, because I think that trope is pretty played out. So that gave Bryce Dallas Howard an opportunity to not be the person running around in the jungle with heels on. Like, she actually got to kick a little ass here and there. So I do appreciate his character from that standpoint. It kind of helped avoid that particular trope.
Do you think they did the whole airplane thing where she gets out and you see her boots? Do you think they did that just because people bitched about the first movie?
100%. They were even saying that leading up to the movie coming out, that she wasn't going to be running around in the jungle in heels. So 100% they showed those boots on purpose.
Yeah, I kind of thought about that when I saw that. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So at least you're listening.
Yeah, well, we'll see what they do with Jurassic World 3, how much they listen to the backlash from this movie.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, it's not doing horrible in Rotten Tomatoes. Like, we had talked about this off recording, which apparently we're just giving all of our secrets away on this episode. We do, in fact, actually talk off recording, but this was actually doing really well on Rotten Tomatoes. Well, relatively speaking, I think it's definitely had a bad streak of bad reviews, deservedly so, and I think it's down to like 50%, which is kind of where I thought it was going to end up being. But at one point it was like 60% with like 50 or 60 reviews, so it was actually doing fairly well. And we were talking about how that could be a big deal because obviously it was one of the lower picks in our Rotten Tomatoes film draft. So I think it's kind of where I thought it was going to be. Luckily for me, well, hopefully for me, it doesn't go any lower because this is kind of at its threshold where it needs to be for me to still have a chance to win, because you've had a couple of 90s. So I need to have a surprise movie or two come up for me to have a chance to win. I think Into the Spider-Verse is probably my best shot at getting a 90. I think that movie is just going to fucking blow people away. So I'm definitely excited about it. But I need another movie like maybe Dark Phoenix or something to kind of come out and just to surprise people. I need Dark Phoenix to be what I thought Apocalypse was a couple of years ago. So yeah, I'm definitely a little bit nervous, but yeah. I don't know, man.
There's still a lot of movies left, so we'll see. I think when you average it all out, I'm winning by like 5 points right now, but there's still a lot of shit to come out, so we'll see. For sure.
All right.
Which I will say 50%, okay. I'm sorry, 50% for this movie is surprising. Like 50% of people that reviewed this movie liked it, so I don't know what that says about us.
So right on to the action. This is the thing, obviously, with a Jurassic Park movie that you get most excited for, but like I kind of talked a lot about in my broad strokes and throughout this review, is I was pretty bored with this movie. Like there wasn't a whole lot of action and I was like, okay, that's cool. I mean, honestly, I can't even think of one that I was like, oh, that's really cool. At one point in the trailer, you see Blue take on this new dinosaur, and I was like, okay, I've been waiting for that point in the movie, and then it was very anticlimactic.
Yeah, there are definitely some cool points around the action that I did enjoy, but when you factor in everything else that's going on, it doesn't really quite hit as hard. Pretty much once they get off the island, everything seems to dull down quite a bit and drags on, even with the action scenes, especially around like the Lockwood estate. Like I never was bought into anything going on there, so it was definitely some of the poorer Jurassic Park, Jurassic World action that we've ever seen.
Yeah, like I said, I never thought I was going to see a movie where I was going to be bored to see dinosaurs, and somehow they did the impossible and made a boring dinosaur movie. So there's that. So moving on to star rating, I guess, what'd you end up giving Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom?
Oh, man, I don't know. When I first got out of the theater, I think that I was at a 2.5. But I think after kind of ripping it apart with you a little bit and really dissecting it a little more, I'm going to probably go with a 2.
Yeah, I was kind of very similar to that. But then when we were sitting here talking, I was like, I just kept trying to think of positive things to say about it. And I was really coming up empty because there wasn't a whole lot about this movie that I really enjoyed. Like, I never really smiled during this movie. Like, I never really, other than the geeky IT guy, there was really not a whole lot in this movie that I enjoyed. It was almost like they wanted to take everything I didn't like about Jurassic World and make a whole movie out of it. And so, yeah, I'm going to go with 2 as well.
Yeah, it's disappointing for sure, because I would have loved for this movie to be amazing, and it just wasn't in the cards.
For sure. So we end each episode with what we call a nerd favorite. The topic changes from episode to episode. We actually take turns asking each other what your favorite blank is. Obviously, like I said, the topic changes from episode to episode. And since we just got done talking about Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, and we're both big Jurassic Park fans, I thought it would be kind of cool. I actually saw this article on IGN, so before anybody thinks that I plagiarized, I mean I did. I stole the idea for sure, but I wanted to give them credit so nobody listening thought that I came up with this idea on my own. This is definitely something that I stole from them. But they made a list of their top, I think, 12 or 10 or whatever. It was a weird number, Jurassic Park deaths. And so I wanted to talk about mine. Well, I guess our favorite Jurassic Park deaths in the franchise. So mine is one from Jurassic World, which is surprising because obviously I'm a huge fan of Jurassic Park. I mean, I like Jurassic World as well, but one moment from that movie that always sticks out to me is my favorite part of the movie. Unfortunately, it's when a decent person dies in the movie. It's Zara Young, who is like the assistant to Claire in Jurassic World. She's obviously taking care of the kids while they're kind of doing their little vacation. And she gets eaten. Well, you think she's going to get eaten by what are the flying ones called? I'm not.
Pterodactyl?
Yes. Well, I don't know why I couldn't think of the name of that. You think she's going to get eaten by them, and then all of a sudden the thing jumps out of the water and snatches them both up. I think that's by far the coolest moment in a pretty fun movie. So that is definitely my favorite death from the Jurassic Park franchise.
So mine was like, as soon as you posed this question, mine was pretty obvious. And I was like, oh, this is going to be his too, for sure. So I'm going to have to think of something else. So I'm glad you didn't take mine. Mine is probably one of the more iconic deaths in the Jurassic Park franchise. And that comes from the first one. And it's the dude that gets eaten while he's on the toilet.
Well, yeah.
100%. So I remember thinking that was so funny whenever I was younger and this movie first came out. And like it involves the T-Rex, which is the most identifiable dinosaur in these movies. So, yeah, I loved that part. And I think that the Jurassic World death you called out is really cool. And I forgot about that one. But I think for me, I just want to go with the iconic death from that first movie.
That's a good one, and that's definitely one that when I thought about this, or at least when I didn't come up with the idea, but like when I saw the article, I was like, okay, well, he's gonna be number one for sure. But for me, like when I was thinking about it, I was thinking, okay, well, there's so many cool moments from that movie. Not that there's not a lot of cool moments in Jurassic World too, but it was like that's the first thing that I think about when I think of Jurassic World. That's not the first thing that I think about when I think about Jurassic Park. So that's kind of where I was at with that.
You know what? I think Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom makes the first Jurassic World look like Jurassic Park. Like I am really like looking at that movie through rose-colored glasses right now because of how bad Fallen Kingdom was. Like I almost want to go watch Jurassic World at this point.
Yeah, I almost did. I almost put it on when I got home, but then I was like, I'm pretty tired. I'm not gonna make it through most of this movie. So just real quick, I mean, I know we're kind of going along with this episode, but where would you rank Fallen Kingdom among all the other Jurassic Park sequels?
That's really tough for me because I don't remember Jurassic Park 3 very well. So I would say that it is right there with Jurassic Park 3 as being the worst. Like I liked The Lost World better than this movie. Obviously Jurassic Park and Jurassic World better. So it's either last or second to last. I'd have to rewatch Jurassic Park 3.
Yeah, Jurassic Park 3 is not great, but I think I ultimately feel pretty similar. It's hard to distinguish between which one's worse between these two. I would say I would give credit to Jurassic Park 3 just because it has a recurring character from it. I mean, I guess Chris Pratt and Claire and Owen are recurring characters, but I'm talking about Sam Neill.
Yeah.
And so I think ultimately I would give the nod to Jurassic Park 3 just because of that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So
all right, so I think that's it for episode 195 of the Nerd You're Looking For podcast. As always, we'd appreciate it if you subscribe, rate, review us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, basically any good podcatcher you use, we're on it. You can check out our website, thenerdspodcast.com. You can comment and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like I said, I'm streaming a walkthrough of The Last of Us. I'm also, not really finishing, but I'm making my way slowly through my Far Cry 5 walkthrough. I'm also doing a walkthrough of Detroit Become Human. that walkthrough is no commentary, so definitely check it out. If you like video games but don't like my stupid voice, then the Detroit Become Human walkthrough is probably for you. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram. They're both at The Nerds Podcast. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Google+. Email us at thenerdsyou'relooking@gmail.com. And finally, if it's still a thing, vote for us for Podcast of the Month at podcastland.com. I haven't checked that website in a long time, so I don't know if that is still around, but we're just going to keep saying it over and over again. So, yeah, definitely do all of those things. For Patrick Kuhn,
Tyler Hunt.
we are the nerds you're looking for. Take it easy, guys.
Later, guys.